Mathematics 4, Quarter 3, Week 3, Matatag Curriculum. Competencies: reduce fractions to simplest form, compare dissimilar fractions using the symbols equals to, greater than, and lesser than. Reducing fractions to simplest form using GCF, comparing dissimilar fractions, comparing dissimilar fractions using models, comparing dissimilar fractions. For the integration, equality, fairness, and collaboration. For the review, give the common factors of the given numbers. After identifying the common factors of each pair, identify the common factors which is the greatest or largest. For the first pair, we have 6 and 10, 8 and 12, 18 and 15, and 20 and 30. Let us now answer. For 6 and 10, we have 1, 2, and the GCF is 2. For 18 and 15, we have 1 and 3, and the GCF is 3. For 8 and 12, we have 1, 2, and 4, GCF 4. For 20 and 30, 1, 2, 5, and 10, GCF 10. Identify the correct symbol to compare two numbers. What mathematical symbols can we use when we compare numbers? We can use the mathematical symbols less than, greater than, and equal to when comparing numbers. So here are the numbers to be compared: 46 and 49, 1,400 and 1,400, 721 and 712, 245 and 205, 989 and 9,818, 5.345 and 5.355. Let us now answer. 46 is less than 49. 1,400 is equal to 1,400. 721 is greater than 712. 245 is greater than 205. 989 is less than 9,818. 5.345 is less than 5.355. In our previous lesson, we explored that equivalent fractions are and how they are generated. Furthermore, we explored how to get the factors of a given number and the common factors of a set of numbers. This lesson is a prerequisite to the next lesson we will explore. The greatest common factor, or GCF, is the largest among the common factors of given numbers. It is also the greatest or largest number that can divide the given numbers without remainders. Let's discuss reduced fractions to simplest form using GCF. Identify which among the fractions is or are equivalent to the given fraction using models. Then, encircle the answer or answers. Number 1, 5/10 is equal to 4/6, 1/4, 1/2, or 3/9. The second one, we have 2/8 is equal to 1/4, 1/8, 2/5, and 3/6. Let us now answer. For number 1, 5/10 is equal to 1/2. For number 2, 2/8 is equal to 1/4. For 5/10 is equal to 1/2, given the fraction 5/10, what are the common factors of the numerator and the denominator? The common factors of 5 and 10 are 1 and 5. Which is the greatest among their common factors? You're right, the greatest common factor of 5 and 10 is 5. If you divide both numerator and denominator by their greatest common factor, what fraction will you get? You're right, 5/10 divided by 5/5 is equal to 1/2. Can you still think of a common factor except one, which can both divide the numerator and denominator of 1/2? You're right, none. When do you say that a fraction is in its simplest form or lowest term? You're right, a fraction is in its simplest form or lowest term if no other common factor can divide the numerator and denominator except one. We call the numbers relatively prime. Numbers are relatively prime if they have no common factor except one. Therefore, the lowest term or simplest form of 5/10 is 1/2. 5/10 is 1/2 are equivalent fractions. For 2/8 is equal to 1/4, given the fraction 2/8, what are the common factors of the numerator and the denominator? The common factors of 2 and 8 are 1 and 2. Which is the greatest among their common factors? The greatest common factor of 2 and 8 is 2. If you divide both numerator and denominator by their greatest common factor, what fraction will you get? 2/8 divided by 2/2 is equal to 1/4. Can you still think of a common factor except one, which can both divide the numerator and denominator of 1/4? None. When do you say that a fraction is in its simplest form or lowest term? A fraction is in its simplest form or lowest term if no other common factor can divide the numerator and denominator except one. We call the numbers relatively prime. Numbers are relatively prime if they have no common factor except one. Therefore, the lowest term or simplest form of 2/8 is 1/4. 2/8 and 1/4 are equivalent fractions. For activity number 1, reduce the given fractions in simplest form. Write the factors of numerator and denominator, the common factor or factors, the GCF, and the lowest term with solution. For number 1, 8/24. Number 2, 4/28. 3, 6/30. Number 4, 30/20. Number 5, 2 and 12/36. Here are the correct answers. Based on the given examples, How do we reduce fractions to its simplest form or lowest term? You're right. Factor the numerator and denominator of the given fraction. Identify their common factors. Determine the greatest common factor. Divide the numerator and denominator by their greatest common factor. If both numerator and denominator are relatively prime, then the fraction is in its simplest form or lowest term. Complete the table below. Write the factors of numerator and denominator, the common factors, the GCF, and the fraction in simplest form or lowest term with solution. Let us now answer. For number 1, the correct answer is 1/3. Number 2, 1/4. Number 3, 1/5. Number 4. And for number 5. For day 2, compare dissimilar fractions using fraction strips and or this. Fraction scavenger hunt. Your teacher will hide different pairs of color-coded fraction cards inside the classroom. Each group will look for pairs of dissimilar fractions written on colored papers. You will only search for the pairs of fractions based on the color assigned to your group. Once you find the pairs, list them on a cartolina or manila paper and illustrate them by drawing either fraction bars or strips or fraction circles or this. Then your group will identify which fraction is greater. You may use the table below for reference. For group 1, white. For number 1, fraction card, 2/3 and 1/3. Which is greater? You're right, it is 2/3. For number 2, 3/4 and 2/4. Which is greater? 3/4 is greater. What kind of fractions are the given pairs? Similar fractions. Which fraction has the greater value? You're right, 2/3 and 3/4. Which fractions has the smaller value? Very good, 1/3 and 2/4. Based on your previous lesson, how do you compare similar fractions? When comparing similar fractions, the greater the numerator, the greater the value of the fraction. What symbols are used to compare fractions? Greater than, lesser than, and equal to. When comparing similar fractions, the greater the numerator, the greater the value of the given fraction. The symbols can be used in comparing. Based on the illustrations or models, we can say that 2/3 is greater than 1/3, or in symbol, 2/3 is greater than 1/3. 1/3 is less than 2/3, or in symbol, 1/3 is less than 2/3. 3/4 is greater than 2/4, and 2/4 is less than 3/4. For group 2, yellow. The fraction card, 1/7, 1/9, which is greater? You're right, it is 1/7. For number 2, we have 3/8 and 3/6, which is greater? Very good. Based from the illustration, 3/6 is greater. What kind of fractions are the given pairs? Dissimilar fractions. What have you noticed with the numerators of each pair of dissimilar fractions? They have the same numerators. When the numerators of are the same, which fraction has the greater value? Fraction with smaller denominator. Therefore, which fraction has the greater value? 1/7 and 3/6. Which fraction has the smaller value? It's 1/9 and 3/8. When comparing fractions with the same numerators, the fraction with smaller denominator holds the greater value. Therefore, based on the illustrations or models, we can say that 1/7 is greater than 1/9. 1/9 is less than 1/7. 3/6 is greater than 3/8. And 3/8 is less than 3/6. For the group 3, we have blue. For the first set of fraction cards, we have 2/3 and 1/2. Which is greater? You're right, it is 2/3. For the second one, we have 3/4 and 4/5. Which is greater? Very good, it is 4/5. What kind of fractions are the given pairs? Dissimilar fractions. Which fraction has the greater value? 2/3 and 4/5. Which fraction has the smaller value? 1/2 and 3/4. Based on the illustration or models, we can say that 2/3 is greater than 1/2. 1/2 is less than 2/3. 4/5 is greater than 3/4, and 3/4 is less than 4/5. For the group 4, we have red. The first set of fraction cards are 2/8 and 1/3. Which is greater? Very good, it is 1/3. For the second one, we have 4/6 and 3/10. You're right, it is 4/6. What kind of fractions are the given pairs? Dissimilar fractions. Which fraction has the greater value? 1/3 and 4/6. Which fraction has the smaller value? It's 2/8 and 3/10. Based on the illustrations, we can say that 1/3 is greater than 2/8, 2/8 is less than 1/3, 4/6 is greater than 3/10, and 3/10 is less than 4/6. Name the fractions illustrated by each given. Then compare using symbols greater than, less than, or equals to. Here are the set of fractions for letter A, B, and C. For letter D and E. Let us now answer. For letter A, it is greater than. For letter B, less than. For letter C, equal to. For letter D, greater than. and for letter E is equal to. Fraction dice game. Compare the fractions using symbols. For visual representation, fractions, strips or bars, or fraction circles shall be utilized. For day 3, compare dissimilar fractions. Model the word problem using paper folding and coloring. Theon and Rafa bought the same chocolate cakes of the Matatag bake shop. Theon sliced his cake into 8 equal parts and ate 2 slices, while Rafa sliced his cake into 4 and ate 2 slices. Who ate a larger portion of their cakes? Theon sliced his cake into 8 and ate 2 slices, while Rafa sliced his cake into 4 and ate 2 slices. What fractions represent the portions eaten by Rafa and Theon? Theon 2/8 and Rafa is 2/4. Based on the models, who ate a larger portion of the cake? You're right. Rafa ate a larger portion of the cake. This means that 2/8 is less than 2/4 or 2/8 is less than 2/4. What have you noticed with their numerators and denominators? Very good. They have the same numerators but different denominators. Based on our previous lesson, how do you compare dissimilar fractions with the same numerators? The smaller denominator has the greater value when comparing dissimilar fractions with the same numerators. Dissimilar fractions can be compared using different strategies. Strategy 1. Finding equivalent fractions of the given with the same denominators. 2/8 times 2/2 is equal to 4/8, which means that 2/4 is equal to 4/8. Since 4/8 has the same denominators with the given 2/8, we can say that 2/8 is less than 4/8. Hence, 2/8 is less than 2/4. After getting the equivalent fractions of the given with the same denominators, what have you noticed with the kinds of fractions they will be? Getting the equivalent fractions of the given with the same denominators is the same as changing the similar fractions to similar fractions without changing the given fractions' values. After changing the similar fractions to similar fractions, how do you compare? When the fractions are similar, simply compare their numerators. The bigger the numerator, the greater its value. Strategy 2. Classifying fractions into less than 1/2, equal to 1/2, and greater than 1/2. Using illustrations or models, it is easier to identify if a fraction is either less than 1/2, equal to 1/2, or greater than 1/2. However, without using visual representations, how can we classify the fractions? Let us look at the following. For fraction equal to 1/2, which is equal to 1/2? 2/4 is equal to 1/2. What have you noticed with the numerator and denominator of a fraction equal to 1/2? The numerator is always half the denominator. Therefore, We can say that a fraction is equal to 1/2 if the numerator is half the denominator. For fraction less than 1/2, which fraction is less than 1/2? 2/8 is less than 1/2. What have you noticed with the numerator and denominator of a fraction less than 1/2? When a fraction is less than 1/2, the numerator is noticeably less than half of the denominator. For instance, the fraction 2/8, the numerator 2 is less than half of the denominator 8. This is evident as half of 8 is 4, and 2 is less than 4. Therefore, we can say that a fraction is less than 1/2 if the numerator is less than half of the denominator. Since 2/8 is less than 1/2 and 2/4 is equal to 1/2, therefore 2/8 is less than 2/4. For fraction greater than 1/2, when a fraction is greater than 1/2, the numerator is noticeably greater than half of the denominator. For instance, the fraction 5/8, the numerator 5 is greater than half of the denominator 8. This is evident as half of 8 is 4 and 5 is greater than 4. Therefore, we can say that a fraction is greater than 1/2 if the numerator is more than half of the denominator. For day 4. Strategy 3. Using cross multiplication. In our lesson on equivalent fractions, we could determine and check whether the given fractions are equivalent by cross multiplication. We can use the same strategy when comparing fractions. Let us try using the same examples. 2 times 4 is equal to 8 is less than 2 times 8 is equal to 16. Therefore, 2/8 is less than 2/4. Let us compare the following fractions using the 3 strategies. Let us now answer. For strategy 1. Strategy 2. Strategy 3. Compare the given fractions using the symbols. Write the correct symbol inside the box found in the second column. Show your solutions using the 3 strategies. Let us now answer. For number 1, 3/4 is greater than 1/5. Number 2, 3/6 is equal to 7/14. Number 3, 17/20 is less than 9/10. Number 4, 1/3 is less than 8/15. And for number 5, 5/12 is greater than 1/6. Complete the table. What I've learned from the discussion, concepts that are somewhat confusing, and concepts I totally don't understand. For the assessment, identify the GCF of the numerator and denominator of each fraction. Then express each fraction in its simplest form or lowest term. Here are the given. And here are the correct answers. Compare the following fractions using the symbols. Illustrate them using any of these models: a fraction disc or circles, fraction strips or bars, and number lines. Then, show another solution using any of the three strategies discussed. Here are the given fractions. And here are the correct answers. For number 1,